recording. What's going on? How are you doing?
Well, I was doing really well. I thought I was like almost cured, and I had a few days of just really feeling completely different. And
Awesome. That's awesome. So, and when we worked together before, you had some moments like that too, which is awesome because it gives you a sense of there is a way for me. There is a way for me to surrender and to change things. And when you and I talked last, you remember you saying, "Oh my God, I hope it lasts." And I had said to you, "It's going to last as long as you face your fears. It's going to last as long as you don't hide behind food and use food and manipulate your life with food. It's going to last as long as that." Right?
Yeah.
Have you watched our last session? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that part. I watched part of it, and then I started watching another one that you had done with somebody else.
Yeah. Yep, at the very end. And so as you go through this, it's not a matter of it's not working anymore. It's a matter of you're not doing the same thing anymore. You've changed you're going back to what you used to do. So what do you expect? Right? Yeah. And it's not, and you could say, you're still facing certain fears and the same fears aren't going to come up anymore and it's not as bad, but there's other fears that you're refusing to face, which means you need your food and food becomes highly gratifying as a defense mechanism. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm assuming you're kind of, I'm assuming you've started using food again?
Yeah.
Huh. What do you think what are you hiding from? What do you think it is?
Well, I know what it is. I went out to dinner with my friends, a couple of friends. It was her birthday, and it was a really good day because I had faced the fear about dying.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got home, they gave me all their leftovers because one of the girls just had weight loss surgery last week. The other one had it a year ago, and so the one that just had it couldn't eat anything, and she gave it to me, and I was like, I just took it. I don't know why, because I thought I would eat it, and I would eat it normally. And so anyway, during that, at the end of the meal, we went to get coffee, and one of the girls asked the guy to take a picture of us. And so he got a full-length picture of me sitting down. And I wasn't expecting I have this condition with my leg. And one doctor diagnosed it as lymphedema.
Uh-huh.
When I got to the physical therapist, she said it wasn't lymphedema. It was lipedema or lipedema,
Uh-huh.
which is a disorder. And then the lady that tried to fit me for compression said I don't have lymphedema, and she was having a really hard time fitting me because my ankles and my feet are skinny, and my bulges are typical of lipedema, which is a fat disorder caused by hormones. And that brought me back to the whole reason I was interested in HCG to begin with, because some women have had success with that, and there's that part in that book where Dr. Simeon talks about the woman that sits down in the chair and she looks normal until she sits up, and then she has all the fat in her breast. Well, that's what the
You know what, you're really breaking. It's really choppy when I'm talking to you.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, it's okay. It just is real choppy. It's like, it's kind of hard to hear.
Yeah, you can't hear me. I can't understand myself when I listen, so I can't imagine how you can.
Well, I can hear you now. It's much more clear.
There's two separate conditions, and the physical therapist, even the doctor, was like uncertain what to diagnose me with. But the lipedema is basically a hormone disorder, and it kind of gets worse around puberty, around perimenopause, and menopause.
Yeah.
And in Dr. Simeon's book, he was talking about the lady that when she sat down in the chair, she looked normal, and then he got up and he saw how big her legs were.
Yeah.
And that's when he realized she was overweight. Well, that's kind of what I have, except I have regular obesity on top of that.
Yeah.
And I've kind of pretty much diagnosed myself because I'm in perimenopause, and I had in my calves, I haven't like I weighed 400 pounds, but I weighed 400 pounds before, and my calves are like 4 inches bigger than they were 3 years ago. So, but I don't have skinny ankles and I have skinny feet. And so when the compression lady was trying to fit me, she was like, I don't think you have lymphedema because lymphedema doesn't look like this.
Yeah.
And then the physical therapist was
Said
like,
the
I
same
don't think
thing.
you have lymphedema. I think you have lymphedema.
Yes, got it.
So anyway, HCG, a lot of women in my Facebook group don't like it because they gain their weight back, so they say that it doesn't work. But there was a lady, but that's only because of the food issues.
Exactly. You're seeing it clear as day. You're like, yeah, of course, nothing. There's not one thing that will ever work for you. Not one thing. Nothing will work. Nothing. Until you fix yourself, yeah.
But I was listening to your videos, and you're talking about the hormonal, how it creates hormonal imbalances and it changes the mitochondria. And the mitochondria, I might not even saying all this right.
No, you are. I wouldn't worry about it.
The doctor that talks about lipedema, she was like, I think it's a disorder of the hormonal disorder, and then she talks about mitochondria. And I'm like, well, and there's this other lady that I met that actually went on HCG and was able to keep her weight off, and she lost all of her fat in her legs, and then she got liposuction to get the lipedema fat, which is apparently can't be removed, but it's only a small portion of the fat. But what happens is it's really hard because of the abnormal whatever of the fat it becomes very hard on the lymphatic system. So the lymphatics anyway. That's why I was interested in HCG, was because it helps a lot with the fat in that area. And plus, you were talking about the fat that was removed from people that were in menopause, just regular people, how they could, get the fat that develops in menopause was removed. So I really wanted to try it just to see if it would work. But, of course, I can't, so anyway, I saw the picture and I didn't realize how distorted my legs actually look, even though I knew they were distorted or deformed or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you just got a different viewpoint of your body. Mm-hmm. Because you probably don't have full length mirrors in your home, and you're just not really seeing the full consequences of this relationship you've had with food.
Well, there's fat in them, but I have like bulges where they're not supposed to be bulges. Like,
yeah, I mean, all of these are direct consequences of how you've. Yes, this is not uncommon for people with morbid obesity that have these issues, that are using food as a shield and as weapons. And it's, yes, correct. And so this is where we have to go into. You just have to accept it. Otherwise, what's going to happen?
Well, I'm just afraid that even if I accept it, I'm going to continue to develop more fat in my lower body.
Well, for sure, if you continue to use food the way you have been, yes, that's the truth, for sure. You're right. It's not, you shouldn't even be afraid of it. It's a guarantee for sure. And you know that. It shouldn't even be a fear. The fear is you remember when we talked about, you had that skin condition last week? You were like, oh shit, now I have to face the consequences of this behavior, which means my behavior with food might have to stop, which creates this feeling of panic. So it's the same thing, right? It's just, you've got to be able to really take a step back, take a deep breath, and recognize all of this has to be accepted for you to really get relief again. You have to accept it if you want, unless you want to keep on having issues with food, right? So if you look at where you got that, oh my God, I'm cured, which I never would admit if I was in the process, right? Because you don't really know what that is quite yet. You can just tell there's relief. You're clearly not aware of what you're still holding on to that would create the same, like you going quickly slipping back into it, right? Fear of the body, having to change my weight, fear of death, right? So, and this was a good thing for you, I think, to have to face and to go back into what you did before, to see the repeat of your history, which is exacerbating the issue you're afraid of, right? Do you think that binge eating and having these perpetual binge eating relationship with food in order to hide from your fear and do you think it's really improving your symptoms?
No, and I don't think that was the only thing. I think that was just one thing. Because when I got home and I put the food in the refrigerator, I remember thinking there was no. At that point, I did not want to binge. Like the absence of the fear of dying was not there, and I noticed that it wasn't there. And it wasn't until I came back in the living room and I sat down and I realized how lonely I was after that whole night.
Give me a second. Lonely. Okay, so I just want to write this down. So I just want you to slow down. Realizing you're lonely. Okay. Yeah, and so you had to, in that moment, felt sorry for yourself.
Well, I felt lonely. That's as far as I got.
And there had to have been a moment you felt sorry for yourself. Feeling lonely isn't going to trigger a binge. Feeling sorry for yourself, however,
not knowing how to fix it was what.
Yeah, well, okay, so, yes, and grieving too. So the emotion came up of loneliness, right?
I also remember thinking, like, I really feel like I have a gift because I found you, and I really wanted to tell my friends about you. And then when they took that picture, I was like,
don't say anything yet.
Nobody's ever going to listen to me because I'm still way more than they do.
You know what, Heather?
It's not going to ever take me seriously.
It's not, and I want you to know.
Even if you've helped me, if I don't lose any weight, nobody's ever going to take me seriously.
Who cares?
I mean,
who cares? Who cares if someone takes you serious or not? Do you want recovery?
Yes.
Then who cares if they take you serious or not? They're going to think I'm batshit crazy. They're going to be like, what the fuck? She's listening to some crazy lady that says to accept your fat? Right? Who cares? It's not about them. Why are you trying to please other people? This is not about them, dearie. You can't. I think right now this is really good lesson for you to recognize that you cannot allow your desire to help other people or to be this is to be a personal, sacred thing between you and yourself.
Well, the whole evening, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but the whole evening was about weight. Like, the weight loss surgery isn't working for them.
Oh, yeah. You hear that language? It's not working for me. Okay.
No, it's not working for them.
You know what I mean.
It's not working for them.
Yeah, yes.
So Tammy's actually got to become more obsessed with her weight now that she's lost the weight and now she's gaining it back.
Oh, and you can have compassion for her because you've been through that.
But I don't know what I'm supposed to say because I feel like
you'll figure it out.
I used to be the one that would say, I'm a food addict, I'm a food addict, I'm a food addict. And now she thinks she's a food addict.
Okay, so Heather.
Like me.
Heather, listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what you say. You'll figure it out. And you put that in quotes and then you say, you'll figure it out. It's not your business. Her issues are not your business. You just need to be there and listen to her vent. This is a very, very personal, and it's also very spiritual, if you can't tell, process. And she might not be ready. She might not be ready for this type of work. You could say, hey, I really enjoy this girl on YouTube. She works with people that do all this stuff. Send her a link to my YouTube video and let them think I'm crazy. Because you and I both know that you probably thought I was crazy too.
Oh no, I didn't. The first time I found you in a Facebook group for food addiction, and this lady posted one of your videos, and she apologized. I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to post this. And I just remember listening to you, and I was like, here's this thin lady that is absolutely free from. You were not judging the other lady that you were talking to at all.
Of course
there was
not.
Absolutely zero judgment. And I just thought, I rarely see that.
Yeah.
And you were talking about leptin resistance and HCG, but what really struck me was how much you were into the science of it, and you weren't really. There was no judgment attached to only judgment you had was attached to your findings. Like that's what you were, because that's what you were talking about. But you're as far as the woman that was in front of you, which was like a 400-pound lady.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no, like you could I could tell that you were someone that you could have a conversation with that wouldn't be in the back of your mind.
Yeah, stigmatizing you, thinking you're a piece of shit. Of course not. I don't. Yeah.
So,
well, that's because I
never
see.
heard anybody like that.
You got to get beyond that to recover, right? I have recovered. I had to get beyond that, not just with myself, but with everything outside of that, right? Because if you can get beyond your own self-identity with a body, that then you can see past the illusion that you are the consequence of the body. The body is a consequence of the environment, right? And we could look at your relationship with food. And this is where you're going to have, this is such a private, personal, spiritual process. They can think you're as crazy as you want. It's not their process, and it's none of their business. You can have compassion for them, like you said, like this girl who lost weight, now she's regaining it, is 10 times worse. Oh, it's heartbreaking for her. That's okay. You can have compassion for her, but you're not going to rescue her. She's going to have to rescue herself, just like you are rescuing yourself. The best thing you can do for your friends, and the best thing you can do for yourself is really honor that this is a very personal, sacred, spiritual process. You're not going to change their desire to be thinner. If you say to her, hey, what you need to do is be okay with obesity and gaining all this weight back, she's going to look at you like you're crazy. And you know what? At some point, you can share the YouTube videos with her. Just share a couple YouTube videos with her. Just say, this has really helped me so much, but you don't need to be the example of losing weight. Again, now we're getting back down to the other side of this process, which is the desire to be thinner and how that threatens your relationship with food. Right?
Yeah.
You making sense? So, So if anything, I'm hoping that this experience for you is giving you clarity. Like, okay, now I really have to get back into that freedom, because let's talk about that. Heather, what is it going to take for us to get you back into that freedom after a small kind of relapse, which to me is beneficial. Relapses are beneficial. Not physically, of course, it's exacerbating the physical problems, but the benefit is your awareness of what sucks you back into that.
Well, I just have to accept. I have to keep talking because I would never figure that out. I have to accept that I haven't accepted my weight as it is.
Yeah, well, yes, that the body, it's none of your business to fix it. If that's not your business.
I just had a couple of days of just incredible freedom. I mean, I went to the cake store to get my friend a cake because she wanted a cake.
Yeah.
And I went to the specialty bakery because she wanted a hummingbird cake.
Oh.
And I went in there and I had a sample, and like that was enough. Right. When I went to eat dinner, and I hardly ate anything because I wasn't hungry and I didn't care.
Yeah.
And it was just, and there was I felt the stress level from not being afraid of dying.
Yeah, it just brought everything down for you, I bet.
Yeah, it was just like a perfect day. And
okay.
So
let's I want you to see that as a sneak peek. That's a sneak peek into what your life is going to be like. How did you like it?
It was wonderful. I understood what you said when you were like, do you want to live this way or do you want to live the other way? Freedom. Well, I didn't know what that, I hadn't felt that yet, so I was like.
Okay, how's that feel?
It feels wonderful.
Okay, pause. I want to say something next. Let me talk now. Which one would you rather? Continuing to do what you're doing and access to binging on a daily basis, multiple times a day? Or that freedom?
The freedom, of course.
Okay. So with that said then, if you focus on that freedom and that peacefulness and that And that the free, what you're getting from that freedom too is you don't have shame anymore. You're not carrying fear of the food. You didn't think in that moment that I was doing something wrong by having a taste of cake. How did you like not having all the guilt and shame and fear about tasting the cake?
It was wonderful.
Right? That's freedom. It's like it loses its power. How did it feel that food was powerless?
It was wonderful.
So how can we get you back there? So if you focus your energy on that, put your mind's eye on that. What gave it to you, what gave you the environment is that you're not, again, the freedom from fear of dying, but you had to have had freedom from worrying about your weight. You had to have.
Because I didn't care if I died. I was
correct.
Actually, when I went into it, I was like,
yeah.
When I went into it, what happened was I didn't care if I died. I was actually kind of excited about it because, I wouldn't have any pain anymore.
Well, there's that. But notice as you go into that acceptance, what you're describing too is not just, I'm not afraid anymore. I have accepted it.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on now. Let's pause this conversation. I want to go backwards. We're going to rewind to you saying, but then I got this lipidemia and it's not lymphedemia. And then, oh my God, and my legs and it's big. And oh my God, now what happens? What happened? What happened?
Well, I realized that I was still not in reality. Because I didn't realize what I looked like.
Okay. Now, would you say that did it help you to have fear of your health in the moment? Has that helped you?
No, it didn't. It didn't help me, but it...
What did it do? What did fear...
I guess it's the same fear related to dying,
yeah.
Except...
No, you're right. Yes. Yes, it is. Same. It's just not a skin problem. It's lipidemia. And there's diabetes. And there's a stroke. Don't forget the heart attacks. You can get hit by a car. You're going to get cancer.
Yeah.
You're going to die.
Right.
Don't forget the cat that's going to eat your head off while you're alive.
Yeah, my own cat could do that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Cats, they're still cats.
I know.
He probably would eat me because that's what they do.
You got it. You're going to die. Your cat's going to think you're looking good but someday, and it's going to eat your eyeballs out. Okay?
When it runs out of cat food, what's it going to eat if nobody finds me?
You got it. It's going to go right for that lipidemia in those ankles. That's some good stuff.
It likes sitting on my leg. That's one thing that having this. He fits really easily, and it's very comfortable.
So I do want to say we're making light of this, but why would I? Because it is true. This is real. You have a real physical manifestation now of your use of food as an emotional shield from reality. Yes, right? Let's not be in denial about it. Let's not repress the truth. You definitely have that, right?
I look like those people on the 600-pound channel. Like I have my legs. I look similar, and I didn't realize that I looked that bad, and I do.
So I want you to know that this whole time I've been working with you, I've been aware of that. Not because I've seen you, because I've never seen you, but because that I understand size and height and weights. I've seen so many people doing body comps over the course of 8 years of working with the HCG protocol. I've seen a lot of different body types. Right? Any human being up into the 400-pound range is going to have a lot of flesh. And that's an indication not just of some physiological thing. That's super, super rare, right? You and I both know that your issues stem from psychological and spiritual problems. Your body's been capable of losing weight on its own. It doesn't need you. It doesn't need a diet. It doesn't need the protocol. You experienced that with our first 10 sessions that we used a year ago when we worked together. You were eating to hunger, and we were focusing on accepting your weight, releasing the shame and guilt of food, and you actually ate to hunger, and you had lost, 20 pounds without knowing it?
Which I have kept off.
Not that matters, because I don't give a shit.
I just had to say that.
I know you did. Notice how I took it away. But who cares? You're suffering. You are still suffering. So, open your mind. Let's look at this. You've had periods and moments of different forms of freedom from this kind of cage and this darkness that you've been in. And the clarity that we've been working on around your fears and the use of food to hide from your feelings of inadequacy and I can't handle it and what am I going to do, right? The pressure. When you face and allow those fears to come up, what happened when you faced those fears? What happened?
I get better.
The fear diminishes. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I was afraid of that. I can handle that, right? So it develops that sense of capacity, sense of ability to handle these things that you've never actually faced or handled before in your life, right? Releasing resentment. That's that victim position, that martyr complex that you've had with your mom. Releasing that. What did that do for you? So what we're doing is we're just facing some of these underlying issues and resolving them. Right? And in the end, what relationship are you going to need to resolve? What's the most important relationship here you need to reconcile and make right?
The one with food.
No.
The one with me.
With your body. Yeah, with you and your body. The one with you. Yeah, and then your body. You're right. You were actually more accurate than me. It really comes down to your relationship with yourself. From there, the relationship you have with your body. Right? And from there, the relationship you have to food. So food isn't really the main issue. It's the main weapon you use, right? And shield. Would you agree? Like dysfunctional shield from reality. It has shielded you. It has kept you isolated. It has served you. You've used it to kind of go into denial and shrinking and hiding and pausing your life. You've used it and it has benefited you because of your fear, right? Because of your feelings of inadequacy. So if you stop using food, you now have to address those fears. Your feeling of I can't handle it, inadequacy, fear of what people think, right? So, for example, you really have carried a fear of what people think.
Yeah.
So, if you're based on what we've been practicing, if you do not eat food, what's going to have to happen to what people think? What are you going to have to do?
Release it.
Face it. Yeah, you're going to have to face what people think. What do they think? Right? For example, you're getting this help and you can hear your friends who have similar disorders and similar coping mechanisms as you have with food and body image and all that stuff. And you wanted to share this work. And what held you back? Fear.
Well, I had shared a little bit to Tammy, and she just kind of blew it off. And then I didn't think it was my place to say anything.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the picture, I knew they wouldn't listen to me anyway because all they care about is
the fear of what people think. So that was the answer. Yeah, you were afraid of what people think, especially if you don't represent success with thinness. Let's talk about what that is, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Heather. Let's just address the truth here. What's going to happen as you stop using food to protect you from life? What's going to happen to your weight?
I'll lose weight, and then how am I supposed to explain that?
You don't need to explain anything other than I don't diet. I just stopped using food to protect me from being my insecurity. And I was using food to shield me from insecurity. So that's why I got so big. So I stopped hurting my body. Should I take pride in the fact that it fixed itself?
I'm going to go back and listen to this and write it down.
Well, it's like the abuser taking, like, I stopped abusing my wife. I stopped abusing my wife, and that's why our marriage is working. You know what I mean?
And that's why her bruises aren't there anymore.
Exactly. Because of me, I healed her. Because, no. You just stopped hurting her. So she's not in the negative all the time. Why are you taking pride in her well-being when she's just not being abused anymore? So you see what I'm saying? Like, the key here is that you don't take ownership of the fact that your body is healing itself for all of the consequences of that relationship. Yeah. Like, you just stopped hurting it. Yay!
Yeah.
It fixes itself. I think we talked about this when we first started working together a year ago. I had said, what would happen if you were in a coma? Well, I'd lose weight. Yeah, because your body doesn't need you. It doesn't need you. You got to get out of the way.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think would happen with every person, all of those groups, every single person you've met that says they're addicted to food or has a binge eating disorder, if they actually addressed their underlying issues and resolved that relationship with food, what would happen to their bodies? Everything would work now. Oh, it works. It works for me. Well, what worked for you? The diet or the fact that you actually healed yourself? So you're not doing that behavior anymore. Do you see how it's so distracting to talk about the diet working when, in fact, what caused the problem?
The diet is just
the rescuer taking claim. Yeah. It's like a temporary break from this abusive environment.
A Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's a temporary break from the abusive environment. It's just a pause. Right? So, of course, if you push play and you go back to that abusive relationship, is it what didn't work? What's not working? Is it the diet that didn't work? Is it the diet that's supposed to keep you from that abusive relationship? Whose job is it to keep you from relating to food in such a defense with a survival mechanism? What's going to keep you from doing that? Is it the diet's job to keep you from doing that?
No, it's mine.
Correct. So if you fix those issues and you work on that internal stuff, and the body starts to fix damages that have been done on its own because you're not recreating them, should you take ownership and claim that as your success?
No.
Mm-mm. Your success
is
in
ownership for resolving my issues.
You got it. Oh my God, you would not have gotten that before. Your responsibility is developing a sense of, handling, to face these issues, to actually emotionally mature and to develop a sense of capacity and develop a sense of worth within yourself, even if your body is all fucked up, okay? Even if you have ailments, even if you can still develop a sense of value. How can I do it and you not? Right? How is it that I'm over here loving on you and not judging you? Right? How do I do that?
Because you have a different perspective than other people.
I don't see you as the physical body and what's happened to it. You are not the body you're in and what it's had to do to keep you alive. It's had to gain this weight to keep you alive. That's not you.
So that means I'm still, since I'm still judging myself, I'm really still judging other people even though I thought I wasn't.
Probably. If you're recognizing that right now, you tell me. I'm not in there. I can't know. So if you're still feeling shame.
Because if I thought that I could only help those people.
Yeah, if you lose weight.
If I were thinner.
Yeah. See, now you're getting it. Heather, that was right on. You just said it. You got it. That's so true. See, you're getting it. You're getting this. You're making huge progress. Something like that takes progress to be aware of that.
Well, I'm slow, but I'm
No, you're
making
not.
progress.
You kidding me? No, you're kicking ass. But going back to my point, what do you think? What are you going to have to do for yourself? You know, I can be over here and I can do it with you, but if this is going to work, who has to do it?
I do. I have to, like, when I start getting that desire to eat, I have to either listen to one of your tapes or I have to sit there and think about
Yes.
What's going on.
Yes, I do not recommend you put on a freaking tape. That's just going to confuse you to hell. You need to sit in what's going on. Listen to the tape of that current moment. Do not put on a tape of mine. Don't do it.
No,
that's your opportunity.
One of mine.
No, not even those. I don't want you to do that. I want you to sit in that space because the emotion you're experiencing in that moment, that's what you need to be listening to. You do not need to go to one of our recorded sessions. That's the last thing I want you to do. You can do that on your own time, like when you're not in that stress, when you're bored, get a tape in. Listen to it. It's good to reinforce what you're learning on your downtime, of course. But when you're sitting there and you're like, I just want to eat, the last thing you need is a distraction. What I'm instructing you to do is to actually lay on the goddamn floor if you have to. Get on your bed and don't let yourself move and let it come in and ask it questions. Remember when I was like, it's like the Grim Reaper?
Yeah.
Ask what it is. You've done that before, right? You talked about and what happened?
What happened was a couple days later, like the feeling just went away, out of nowhere, I realized that, like with dying, it's like I realized that, if I die, either I'm going to not exist, so I'm not even going to be aware, or I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm just going to get a reboot and come back as somebody else. But either way,
it is what it is.
If somebody eats me, like I actually Googled what happens to you when you die. They were talking about these life experiences, and your body has a way of protecting itself from all that pain.
Yeah.
Like when you're dying and someone's eating you alive.
Yeah, it does.
There's actually endorphins. There was two versions. There was the religious version, and then there was the science version. So either way, you're kind of covered, because the religious version is you see a white light and you go to heaven, and the other one was your body creates these endorphins and makes you feel like you're seeing light. So you're not even. It has a way of, even though you're being attacked or eaten, your body has a way of
separating yourself. Yeah, and when they're all the same. Whether the science is describing the experience or you believe in the symbolism of the experience, whatever, it's all the same.
So either way, you could actually say there is a God who's looking out for me.
Yeah, the creator of the body. The science of the body, the creator, it's all the same. Yeah, so what I recall, and this is coming, you really should watch our last session. You really, really should. In fact, the last 3 sessions have been like amazing. I feel like they're amazing. I know I do. So I would suggest, with your free time and your boredom, you should watch them. But you had said that it was like, I realized there was some stuff that you realized by just sitting there. And you had these kind of epiphanies that occurred while you were just sitting there. That's what happens, is you have these epiphanies. You have these realizations. And then it makes sense. And then you're like, oh yeah, well, no shit, I'm not going to face this, And then you do have to address the feeling of I'm going to die. That's kind of what you have to address as it comes in. Right? So when you're sitting there and you're aware, I'm not hungry, right? Because there's an awareness of, am I really hungry, or am I bored, or am I what? Right? You know the trigger. You have to be honest with yourself. If you're not hungry, you need to stop and you need to let whatever emotion you're trying to repress, hide, distract from, deny, you need to actually call on it to come in. Right? And face it. Just face it. And I will say, you're not going to feel like you're capable. You're going to go, I can't handle it. And you're going to have that feeling inside you. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. And I want you to realize that you can either handle it by eating food, or you can handle it by addressing it. Actually address it. Why are you here? Like addressing someone, addressing the call of death, addressing your fear. Like it's a person, if you want to make it a person. Are you following me?
Yeah.
And because you realize, I want you to think about this. How many times have you tried to get rid of those feelings with food?
Oh my God, every time.
And they always come back. So it never really gets rid of those feelings, does it? In fact,
Doesn't resolve it.
No, and wouldn't you say that it's over the years, it's gotten bigger and larger and harder and deeper and more intense and more intense and more intense? It's never really diminished over time.
And it's not really when, the last couple things, it's really not that big of a deal. I just thought it was.
Yeah, well, I remember you saying that last session. You were like, it wasn't as big of a deal as I actually thought it was going to be. It was way less. And so it's almost inspiring to go, oh my God, why have I not been facing this shit? I've been blowing it out of proportion. If I just face it, it feels good. There is a sense of like gratification in sitting in fear and sitting in vulnerability. It does there's some reward in there. And what it is your sense of capacity develops, a sense of self-esteem. I can handle this. And it's not handling it by being controlling. It's handling it by surrender. That's how you handle it. Surrender.
Yeah, it's like I remember I felt like a different person, and I remember I felt for a minute, I felt like I could handle anything, and then and to think that my weight was just this little bitty thing that was one itty bitty part of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're in the weight, when you're focused on the weight, my world, what's important has become so small and so shallow. And it's like there's so much more to me than this little person that walks around scared because she's afraid of what people are going to think of her because of my weight. It's like when I went to the cake store and the lady was standing there, I wasn't thinking about she judging me because I weigh 400 pounds and I'm in a cake store. I was like, she's such a cute little girl,
Yeah, and she didn't give a shit. You're the asshole that cares.
Yeah, she was just like wanting to sell me a cake. She tried to sell me a card, actually, a rewards card.
Yeah.
I got the rewards card. She said I get a free cupcake on my birthday. She wasn't telling me I didn't need a cupcake. If I was going in there with all that fear, I would have heard she, making fun of me. Anyway.
Well, let me tell you. You tell me, when it's your birthday, is it okay to have a cupcake?
Oh yeah, I'm going. Definitely.
Thank you. Okay. So going back to what I was telling you a little bit ago, because I think this right here is very important in your recovery. How I see you, you need to see yourself that way. I can't make you see yourself that way. You have to see yourself that way. And what is that way?
Well, I don't know how to explain that except someone that I like.
I'm not judging you. I'm not stigmatizing you. I have a lot of compassion for you. You have to have that for yourself. You aren't what has happened to your body. Of course you participated. Of course you did. But that's what you needed to do to survive. You did. Anybody with that degree and that intensity, right, of fear, if food was what got rid of it, anybody would do it, right? And what would happen to their bodies? If food was what got rid of that intense fear, what's going to happen to their bodies?
The same thing.
Yeah. Does that mean they're bad people, every single one?
No.
What needs to be resolved is your use. Well, first of all, your use of food to survive has to be resolved. The second thing that, obviously underneath that is what you're afraid of, right? First of all, you got to surrender that food, and then what's underneath it is going to come up, right? The reasons why you've been eating, they're going to start coming up. And if you want to resolve this, what are you going to have to do when those reasons come forward and they come in and you're scared and you're feeling like you can't handle it? What has to happen? If you want to end this relationship with food, what are you going to have to do?
I have to be willing to just sit with the feelings.
Face it. Not just sit with it.
Yeah.
Not just sit there with your eyes closed and you're going, la, 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 la. No. Face it. You have to look at it. So I'm giving you a little bit more detail in this instruction. Some people say, sit with it. It'll pass. We need more than that. You need to know what it is. Why is it here? I want you to get to know it. It's been chasing you. You've been running from this shit for decades. You have dedicated your entire life to running away from this. You've been okay with the consequences of what's happened to your body because of this. Don't you think you might want to find out what it is?
Yeah, and it's interesting that, it's the same. Like, even though I thought I got rid of the fear of dying, it's like it comes back.
Well, it comes back in different ways because there's different ways that you're afraid to die. It's not just one way of dying. With a cat eating you, it's dying because of your legs blowing up. And
Slowing.
Yeah. Whatever the
and not being. Sorry.
Whatever the condition of your body is, in reality, it is. Don't hide it. That might have been the other thing too, is you've been repressing the truth of what your body is actually, the state of your body, which makes sense, right? Because to stay in denial about your weight and size and the ailments that you're actually living with keeps you safe from having to surrender your food, right? Can you see why if someone relates to food in this type of survival way, why they'd want to go into denial about the truth about what's happening with their body? We addressed this in our last session. Because now you're having these issues and shit, you got to face your issues with food. Because if this is a life-threatening condition, now I'm going to have to face what's underneath this issue with food, right? So it would make sense to me why you would try to hide from the truth and reality of your weight. Because the truth is going to force you to address your fears, right? And because in a way, the truth about your body threatens your relationship with food. Do you see that?
Well, there's all these recommendations for what you should be eating.
Oh, God. You just got distracted.
I don't know. I just,
We're not there yet. We're just not, you're not there yet. Don't jump ahead. You do need to relearn how to relate to food. You do. You're not done getting rid of the dysfunctional and the toxic codependency with it yet. You still have issues that you need to address before we can say, okay, now we can address how do you want to relate to food now that you're free from all of those issues. Does that make sense? So if we were to strategize like how we're going to do this, of course you need to relearn how to eat. And there is no dogma. We're not going to give you some goddamn food religion. That's the last thing you want to do. And you know what? You have noticed, and you just brought it up, there's a lot of food religion out there.
I guess I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to go on vacation to the beach with my friends because I feel like my weight is just too much.
And that's
too much to fit into a room with 3 other people and, walking on the beach.
Well, then let's do what you can do. Do what you can do. What can you do?
What I can do is I don't know what I can do. I can work on my house and make it a place that I want to live in. And
say it again. Work on your what?
My house.
Okay.
I want to reorganize it and update it and make it
pleasurable. You can have people over. Have you thought to have people over?
Yeah, and I can't do that right now because it's not in a place. Well, it's not. I can have people over for like game night or.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. I
just
like
kind
that.
of take it here.
I think that you're right. I think right now you need to do what you can do with where you're at. Again, I want you to take a step back and look at how your relationship with food, because of these underlying issues, what you've had to sacrifice for that. Right? You've had to sacrifice because you've been so unwilling to face your fears. So terrified. You've been terrified to face these fears. What you've sacrificed.
Everything, my personal life,
Everything.
my social life, my health, my...
Mm-hmm. So you, at some point, you could say, and this is how I felt with my process, because I had sacrificed everything too to stay thin, right? So I was doing the same thing you are currently doing. Okay. However, what I was doing wasn't necessarily with food, although I was binging and I was purging, sometimes up to 10 to 12 times a day, on more like 8 most of the time. I was binging and purging. Is I was obsessing over what I had to do to keep my weight the way it was. So I had no life. So I had literally sacrificed everything because of my body. It's the same thing. I had no life. I had no soul. I couldn't go out in public, even though I had the perfect body. Right? Can you see how I can relate to you?
Kind of. Yeah, the part of it, the isolation, yeah.
The isolation, the constant fear of death around every corner, being terrified, lack of capacity, everything. You and I are freaking identical, okay? The difference is your way of coping is with food. And I coped that way too. I also coped with extreme dieting. It was a double-edged sword for me, okay? Mm-hmm. Both of them sucked, because every time I go into dieting, I was walking on eggshells around binging, and then I would binge, and then I'd have to, and then I'd feel horrible again because I felt so catastrophic. It's like death would call again because I felt like I was gaining weight, so then I'd have to do something drastic to get rid of that feeling. It was double-edged. That's what I lived with, okay? You have one edge. It's still horrible, okay? You have sacrificed your entire life in fear. Right? And so you can complain about that, or you can complain about this relationship with food, right? So when you compare, you have created a life of suffering. Would you agree if someone were to say you have suffered a lot? You're suffering. You're isolated. You feel lonely. You are suffering. Your life has suffered. Your health has suffered. Suffer, right? But there's a reason why. There's a benefit. Why? What is the benefit of all that suffering? What do you get?
I don't feel the fear.
You got it. You got it. And which one's worse?
The hard part is facing it.
In which one?
The hard part is the fear of facing the fear.
Correct. Now, which one's worse? I want you to ask yourself the question. Let's go up into this point. What has been worse? The suffering?
Well, now that I've had a taste, it's obviously the suffering is worse.
Well, of course. But up into this point, what has been worse? The suffering and the isolation and the physicality and everything that this has sacrificed? Or your fear? Which one has up to this point been worse?
The fear, obviously.
Correct.
I wouldn't have been doing it.
You got it. So now you're at a point where you have suffered and your suffering is magnifying. And now what do you have to address if you don't want to suffer anymore?
Well, it's like I said the other day, I was holding on to my last bit of what I thought was normalcy because I was afraid to give up the food and it's not working anymore. Mm-hmm.
Well,
so I have to let go of the food and just...
And
I was feeling that especially because my rash was so bad and I felt like I was dying, and then
we had to address it. You know what happened was 3 sessions ago you had said, well, the food tastes so good, and I was like, bah, stop saying that. That's not true.
Right. I had this other moment. I have to tell you this real quick. I had this other moment I've heard it sometime this week. I don't know if it was before last time or what, but I was sitting it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I discovered this new Mediterranean restaurant, and I knew I would be hungry in a couple of hours, but I had to go to bed, and I thought, well, I can't order it because I'm not hungry, and I was okay with that. And then I went to bed, and about 11 o'clock, I was still not asleep, and I got hungry, and I thought, well, I'm not going to eat because I had to go all the way downstairs, and it's 11 o'clock at night, so I just went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I woke up, and I wanted the Mediterranean food, and I was like, well, they don't open until 11. So I'm just not going to, because if I eat now, I won't be hungry, and I won't be able to eat it. So I kept waiting, because I thought, I want the Mediterranean food.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got really hungry at 10, so I had like a bite of peanut butter, because I didn't want to be starving.
Yeah, just to tide you over.
Then I got the Mediterranean food, and Robin, I ate a fourth of it, and I was full, and I was so pissed off, because I was full.
Because you had waited this whole time.
And it only took me a few bites.
Oh, well, of course. So you remember the science? You remember that science that I described that you said, oh my God, she's describing leptin and all this stuff. Oh my God. You're going to have...
That's not the point, though. I was so pissed off because a little bit of pleasure that I got from the food, like it was gone in like 5 minutes.
I know. And you know what? You're going to have to find an alternative for pleasure in your life, right? And this is where it's kind of hard, because you've relied so much on food to cover up everything and to hide from reality and to, for all these reasons. And so you've become isolated. You've become lonely. You're limited in your mobility. Like you can't go to the beach right now. And so you're going to have to find a different thing that is pleasurable in your life that actually matches where you're at physically right now. Reading books, listening to YouTube videos, listening to music. You're going to have to find a more than one source of pleasure in your life. Right?
I think that was part of the reason why I started binging again, was when I got home and I felt lonely. It was because this realization that I can't just do the things that I want. Even though I felt so much better that day, like I didn't want to face the fact that there's just because I feel better doesn't mean I can just jump in the car and go to the beach and wear a bikini not have issues with fitting in places.
But you don't have the same physical freedom as you want right now.
Right.
Okay, so you went into feeling sorry for yourself.
Okay.
Do you remember in the beginning I said, oh, you must have felt sorry for yourself? That's where the binging comes in. So I think you need to forgive yourself. That's where I would go right now with this. You need to forgive what has happened to your weight, to your body. You have that, the fear has been that massive. I want you to look at your body and recognize that the size and the shape, just look at that and see that as a manifestation of fear. Physically, that's how afraid you've been. Think of what it has taken, how many times you've binged and binged and binged to get to the size you are now. That is how much fear you have been running away from.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do. I just run away from everything.
Okay, so is it forgivable that right now, as you're finally addressing those fears, is it fair to criticize what has happened to your weight, in your body, in your life?
No.
Mm-mm. You need to forgive yourself.
That's what it is. That was the whole. That's what happened. That's what I was feeling that.
For me, you need to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
That way you can have patience with the process. Give yourself grace. That's how horrible this has been for you. So is it fair to sit back and go, well, now that I'm starting to feel free, I'm pissed off, I can't move my body?
Right. That's not really fair to my body, is it?
No, it's not. And then for you to be pissed off about it and say, fuck it, I'm going to binge. Okay, what's going to happen now? I guess you're going to go back into suffering. Now we're suffering again, and you're the master of it. You're the literal master of this world that you're living in. You.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to the fact, the truth, this is factual. It's not, you're not blowing this out of proportion. You're physically limited right now. And that's how much you have avoided. And not only that, but you've been in denial about this weight problem, right? You've been in denial to some degree. Because you don't want to face it. If you face the actual reality of what has happened to your weight, what did that threaten in the past?
My sanity.
Your need for food. Your need for food. If you were to address the actual physical ailments and problems you were having, what does that threaten?
That's the only way I knew how to deal with my fear. I didn't have any other. I didn't know any other way. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get. I don't know if you're understanding this, but so I keep on repeating it. So I want to really think about this. In the past, obviously now we're working through this, but in the past, can you see why it would have benefited you to be in denial about what's going on with your weight? Yeah, it was a coping mechanism. I mean, it allowed me to continue.
With what? Continue with what?
With living the way that I was living.
Yeah, using food to medicate your fear of life in reality. Correct.
Yeah.
So it benefited you to be in denial and to not look at it and to avoid it and repress reality and to not look at your body and to not address those things and to, you're right, and to wait until something bad was really here and you had to go to a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So don't just make sense of that. Go, I have been in total denial. So here we are. Now I have to look at the reality of what has happened.
Right.
And I'm not saying you should feel bad and feel ashamed of yourself, but yes, that's how bad this has been on the fear side. That's how terrified you have been, to the point where you were in denial about everything physically. And here we are in reality, and now you're having a hard time doing anything. That is how important addressing your fear is right now. That's how bad this has gotten, I guess, if you could say, on the food side, right? And you can say, of course, you've been to some degree aware, and you at different times have been like, I need to do something about this. But what should you do about it? Should you go on a diet?
No.
All you got to do is face the fear, face the unknown. Face your sense and feelings inside that you can't handle it. There is a feeling of I can't handle it. Allow that to just be there while things come in.
And be patient.
And yeah, just sit with it. Yeah, sit with it and address it. I don't know if I can handle this, but you know what? I don't have a choice. At this point, I need to handle this. I need to feel it. I need to actually find out what it is I'm running away from. What am I afraid of? And again, the time that you did it, you realized, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Oh my God. Doesn't that give you kind of an excitement to actually face these issues?
Yeah, it gives me a way out.
Yeah. Holy shit. I don't have to relate to food like this anymore. What's the point of this shield that has now become a cage? It's a cage.
Yeah.
So.
It's scary, but it's
Of course it's scary. That's what you've been running away from. Yeah. It's terrifying. It feels like you're going to get dismembered, suffocate. Walls are going to creep in and you're going to get stabbed by these razor blades coming in. I mean, you're going to die. That's what it feels like. And as you've continued to face those feelings, you're starting to get this sense of liberty, freedom, awareness. You can feel that it's right there. It's right there, Heather. I do feel that you needed the clarity today. That's what this session was. It's just you needed the clarity. Let's go back in to get clarity so you can see this straight.
Yeah, I was really concerned because I felt like I wasn't seeing anything.
Well, you know what? You might get some freedom again. You might relapse again. And you know what? Are you going to be okay with that?
Well, it takes what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm definitely here to recover.
You got it. And sometimes those relapse points are just, they get you even more clarity, around, I'm either going to continue to suffer and isolate my life because I'm unwilling to face these things, or I have to be willing to face these things with my palms up, white flag up. I surrender. What is this? I quit. I'm done. I'm done denying what's happening here. I'm done not addressing this because it's chasing you. It's going to chase you your whole life, multiple times a day. I experienced what you experience 10, 15 times a day. Can you see why I became suicidal?
Yeah.
And when I decided to commit suicide, I realized, well, what's the difference?
Right. I remember you say that. I'm like, I felt the same way.
Right?
Really.
I'm like, the suffering has gotten so bad at this point that it's like either, what's the harm in facing fear? You can either sit in your apartment and suffocate to death and your cat's going to end up eating you, or you face your fear. It's the same.
Yeah.
At least one has an option of something different. At least you have potential in one side. On this side, you have nothing. You have what you have. Which is pretty bad.
I had the hope of, I had that little taste, the taste of.
Yeah, on the left.
Showing up for life.
You got it. On the right, you have suffering and doing exactly what you've been doing. On the left, you have pain. Where are you going to go at this point?
Pain.
You got it. You have nothing to lose. And you have that hope, right? You have that potential. All right. Yeah, I got to go. My son just got home.
Okay.